If you're watching this, you were probably expecting to see a polished demo. Instead, we're actually going to configure Halo top to bottom, integrations, portal, have a look at some workflows, all of this in lane for about 8 minutes, and we'll hope to keep it under 20 at the most. If you're evaluating Halo and wondering whether it can do X, Y, or Z after 100 plus implementations, the answer is almost always yes. Watch this first. If you need proof of something specific, send me a message. I'll send you a loom with your specific build requirements. So what I'm going to do first is just spin up a trial. Okay, we've got our trial spun up. I'm just going to go ahead and verify my email address. If you want to follow along and get your own trial, I've dropped a link in the description below. Just pop your details in and you'll be set up in a couple of minutes. So the first thing we care about is making sure that Halo is going to plug into the tools that we're using. So think Entra, think Landsweeper, Intune, Mailbox, Outlook, and Team. So let's do some of those integrations. First, we'll jump into the configuration, bottom left. And much easier to just do a search for Entra ID. There is it's on out of the box. And we just need to configure a new record in this space. We'll give the record a name. We can see the redirect URI we'll need in our app registration, the permissions, and once we create the registration, we can populate the details down the very bottom. So we'll do that. Okay, we are in our Azure tenant, so we'll go ahead and create that registration. We'll give this a name. This is going to be for our Entra ID in Halo. We'll just call it Entra ID. That's perfectly fine. For now, single tenant is correct. Redirect URIs, we'll grab that URI from the Halo config page, pop that straight in there as web, as the platform, and hit register. Okay, now we can configure the registration. We'll start by adding in the permissions. And we can now authorize that as a Azure Global Admin by signing in. And just like that, we have connected to Entra ID. The majority of the config here is going to be good to go out of the box. However, we want to enable SSO as well. So if we jump out a couple of levels back into the Entra ID, there was a second tab for single sign-on. So we'll just populate our tenant ID, app ID, and hit publish. We'll also turn on these two checkboxes so that users and agents don't need to see the Halo authentication screen. They'll be taken straight to your SSO config. You'll note as well, there's another URI that we do need to add to our registration. If we don't add that, when we attempt to log in with SSO, it will fail. We should be good to go. Let's go into the integration, double check everything's looking about right. Default fields are all going to be fine. Let's add in a mapping. For testing purposes for the moment, we're just going to map just my agent record. So sequence 1, test, Dan, role. I'll map myself in as an admin. I've created a group and I'll add this group name just into this field here. Just make sure there's no spaces. We don't need to use groups. We could do it based on filters, but typically best practice will set up groups, admins, non-admins, users as well, potentially depending on if they're at different sites, etc. We'll grab my profile and we should be good to go. We'll hit save, jump into import agents. We should now see my record. Excellent. We can import the record that has been imported into Halo. We can double check that, jumping into teams and agents. Yes, the record is here. It's the same record that I created when I spun up the trial, but we now know that it's actually linked up to the Entra record. So what we can do is grab our URL, open up a incognito window, and attempt to log in via SSO. Here we are, and here is my login. Let's give that a go. Hopefully no errors. There is an error. Let's jump back into the registration and quickly fix that one up. And this is why it pays to read the guides. ID token, there was a couple of checkboxes we needed to enable in our authentication tab. We'll turn these two on, hit save, and give that one another go. Okay, we have enabled those checkboxes. Let's try once more. Looks better. We can see our image. Perfect. That is all set up. A couple final things to note for the integration. We'll want this to sync recurringly. We just need to enable the Halo integrator, say that we want both users and agents. Perfect. Activate them if they're deleted. Sure. And we'll use deltas to speed up that sync. Excellent. And we can enable that. We'll make sure that our Halo integrator is also enabled. Just jumped into the integrator. Agent to log in as. We'll set it to myself. We'll set up a separate record for the integrator in the future, but for now, that is all fine. Okay, next up, we will do our assets. So let's jump into Halo Asset Discovery, which is effectively Landsweeper sites. Plenty of other asset integrations, Intune, SCCM, Ninja One, dozens actually, but we'll use Halo Asset Discovery in this case. This integration is very easy. We're just going to hit authorized application and log in using my Landsweeper credentials. Most of the integrations are either going to be an API key or client credentials, much like what we just did for the Entra. Okay, we have connected. We'll change the connection type to REST API. Look at the guide as to why that's preferred. I've set the mapping from my Landsweeper site into a Halo site. We can change the name and we will change the name of the site shortly. The asset group, we'll put this to computing for the moment. We won't worry too much about, we'll add a couple mapping. Just the model is the only mapping I've added to the asset tag. We've set the default site. We'll keep scrolling through. How do we want to determine the asset type? We can use rules. So based on the model as a common example of the operating system, I'm just going to set laptop to everything just for testing purposes. How do we want to match the user? By default, it will look at the user names. That should be fine. And now down the bottom, we'll turn on our integrator once again and hit import assets. We should see my laptop. Excellent. We can see the username. Perfect. Because that's the name of the actual user on my laptop. It might not match perfectly to my record in Halo, but in a typical enterprise or business setting, that would be defined a bit better. We'll go ahead and import, see if there's any errors. No errors. Perfect. So let's grab the name of this and we should be able to do perhaps a search. We can. Excellent. There is the laptop and it actually has assigned it to myself, which is nice and convenient. So we now have our laptop in. Not many fields are populated. That's because we only added the single name in mapping, but of course we'll go back and fix it up in the future. Okay. Next is going to be our mailbox. Let's jump into config email mailbox. We don't care too much for this demo mailbox. We'll get rid of that. Let's create a new mailbox record. test mailbox. This will be a Office 365 type. And we'll jump into credentials, create a credential. We'll go through and set our details. We use client credentials, client secret, and webhooks is the best practice method. We'll populate the name of my test mailbox. And once again, we can see what permissions are required for this registration. And once again, we'll populate our tenant, app ID, and secret and test that one out. Okay, I've added those details and we can now test that by hitting the create subscription. Perfect. Don't worry about this. This will automatically refresh so long as all the permissions have been granted. So we can test incoming. We should see success. We can. We'll test outgoing. We can provide a test mailbox here to receive that test alert. Test successful, and I'll wait a couple of moments to see that in my mailbox as well. Perfect. I've just seen a screen notification that has been received. So we now have our mailbox configured. So any emails I send to this mailbox will be turned into a ticket. They'll be turned into a incident now that I've set the incident. We won't accept auto replies. And everything else is looking pretty good from there. So we can go ahead and hit save and test this out with a real incoming email. I've just sent that email. We can look in our inbound log, and just like that, that has been received. Halo is now processing all these incoming emails that will be deleted from the inbox, moved into the deleted folder. Be very careful if you integrate a mailbox. Make sure that the inbox is empty. Anything in the inbox will be processed and has been processed. We can actually jump in here, have a quick look at the log, very verbose, which is very good for problem solving and perfect. We can actually see it has created a ticket. We set it as a incident as the default. There it is. Perfect. And excellent. There's my subject. There is my description, and this ticket's ready to go. We can start triaging. We can see who it's come from as well. Two other very valuable integrations to have a quick look over are going to be our Outlook integration. We'll turn that one on. We can jump in here. There's a couple of different options. Have a look at the guide as to the best option for your setup. When we set this up, we can actually create appointments within our users' calendars or our agents' calendars. They can be Teams appointments. They'll be notified of those appointments as well. Very valuable to make sure that all of our comms are coming out of Halo. We'll receive a audit trail as well when those appointments are created. The other integration is going to be our Microsoft Teams integration as well. This one's amazing. Many different features available. My personal favorites are going to be notifications, simple webhook, have this trigger based on a P1 or any trigger you'd like really. Send it off to a group chat or to a Teams channel. Call management and direct messages, a couple of other really good features. They're not really integrations. They're actually on out of the box. Two little buttons against the user record. It will open up your Teams client using the browser commands and populate the user's details automatically. Works out of the box. It will add a little note into your progress trail as well, so that we do know that that was used. And chat management, probably my personal favorite. When this is configured, you'll be able to actually create a Teams group chat with the user. Add as many users to that group chat, send a message to them from the ticket. They'll receive that. Any responses they provide back, they'll all be logged within a ticket as well. Okay, we've got our core integrations out of the way. Let's make Halo look a little bit more personalized. So let's start with our agent color scheme advanced setting. Not very good at the creativity side of Halo, but you can play around with that to your heart's content. Next thing we'll do is brand our self-service portal. Let's jump into the config and at the same time navigate into our self-service portal at the very top here. Okie dokie, this is what we have out of the box. Let's change the logo. Let's change the background. Maybe move these tiles around and remove some of this clutter from down the bottom as well. In our settings, we can change the portal title, the welcome message. We can set a welcome message. We can change the color scheme. Here's our logo config as well as our background image. We can change the naming and the location of our tiles as well. So one moment. Okay, and we're back. Plenty of options here. We can have recent KB articles, top KB articles, users, assets, dashboards, many, many options. But what I've done is I've just have our alerts at the very top. This organization has a lot of problems. Simplified list of tiles. We'll keep our chat widget for the moment. We can customize how that looks later. Logo, nice little background. My approvals, my tickets at the top, and our change calendar as well. I'll give all users access to that. We can set our approval delegation from the top right. And always, if you need deeper customization as well, we do have our custom CSS area. Okay, Halo comes pre-configured out of the box with a service catalog, 3 different service categories we can jump into: IT, accounts, and access. All of these are going to be their own dedicated forms with some example fields on them out of the box. But just for my implementation here, I'm pretty happy to keep these generic. We can certainly hide any that are not relevant to us, and our incident form as well. Here I might actually make a couple of changes. Okay, we're jumping into config tickets, ticket types. This is our incident form. Let's jump into our field list, hit edit. These are the fields on the form. Some of them are visible, some of them are not. These are the ones that we're looking at on the portal form. So let's edit these. I want to make all of these mandatory for end user on the new ticket screen. But I'm going to remove the category option from user visibility. I'm also going to remove the ability for them to assign the impact and urgency. Let's remove the ability for users to nominate their assets, and this looks pretty good for the moment. We'll hit save, double check that's what we wanted to see on the portal. It is summary details, and we'll have the agents handle the impact and urgency for the moment. Okay, so once we log that incident, we want it to go to a specific team. Let's have a look at the default team. The default team is our first line support. Okay, that doesn't really align with what I want to see. So let's jump into config teams and agents teams. These are all example out of the box teams. So what we can do is simply just deactivate any that we don't want to have for the moment. We can definitely delete them as well if we don't anticipate we'll be using them anytime soon. Okay, we have our teams. Let's have a look at our tenant and our client. Let's make sure the naming is there. It is. We can change the icon. This is not my address. I'll populate that. little bit later on, let's have a look at the departments. These departments will be imported based on the department field in Entra ID most typically, but there are a few out of the box, so let's just remove those. Okay, so we just have our IT department now. We'll also check our client area, which is hiding organizations. I don't like that terminology. We can change that in our users config. Okay, we'll set that to users. Sometimes I can take a second to sync through. It looks like it was instant this time. We can see all of the users in the system, a few out-of-the-box examples that we'll need to delete later. My user record that was imported, when I imported my agent record, it created an associated user record as well. Our different sites, let's now modify these site values. Okay, Brisbane, Perth, and Melbourne, we can create new sites if we need, or we can just have a single site as well. And our client record has been created. Excellent. We'll need to update that address later on, but otherwise that all looks good. We can drill into here. We can see an overview of our client. We can see all the users, the sites. We can drill into individual sites. Same thing, see an overview for the site, see all the users that fall under the site, all the assets, the stock, individual requests as well. All of that without needing to even touch a custom report or any reports. Okay, knowledge base, out of the box, already some articles in there. We can review those, see if they're relevant. If not, let's jump into our knowledge base config area. All we really need to do is configure our FAQ lists. These are going to group our knowledge base articles. They're also going to determine if they're visible to users or agents or both. Once we're happy with our groupings, we can jump into our knowledge base, create new articles, or import them from a supported integration, Confluence as an example, via CSV, or we can of course create these manually as well. SLAs out of the box, Halo will come with some pretty appropriate SLAs. Let's jump into our config tickets and service level agreements, SLAs. Incident and service requests will have a quick review over these timeframes, make sure they are roughly appropriate. They are. They'll automatically be allocated to the correct ticket type as well. We can see here the incident is using the incident SLA, and if I jump into a nice example for a service request, it's using the service request SLA, so we can have as many SLA records tied to whichever ticket types we would like. And vendors, let's have a look at our vendors. And the reason we want these vendor records, firstly we can store all that information within Halo, but also if we jump into a incident ticket, perhaps the one that we created earlier, we can actually raise this ticket now to one of our supply records. It's going to populate the support address of that supplier. If we send any amount to our supplier, it's going to hit their system or their inbox. When they reply back, that response will come back into our ticket here, and the communications between us, the vendor, and us, the user, they're completely separate. I'm pretty happy with the out-of-the-box workflow for our incident request. So let's go ahead and double check that this works like we'd like it to. Let's triage this request, ticket type correct. I'll assign this to Jennifer. Unlucky. Let's say that this is quite an urgent issue, despite it is not a test. Category, physical damage. Let's assign my up top. And we'll mention a couple of teammates as well that will receive a email notification. Okay, we have just triaged our ticket. That's an example of an action, many out-of-the-box actions. In fact, all the workflows have all the appropriate actions you'd need. You can create your own actions in Halo. They'll basically do everything, whatever you want them to. We've triaged the request. We can see based on the impact and urgency, this is now a critical priority. That's updated our SLA values. We've hit our response, and we've now moved to in progress, and the workflow stage has progressed. Now that we're in a different stage of the workflow, we have access to many different actions, such as the ability to escalate. There's our create appointment, including our team's appointment, and we can reassign. When we're happy, we can go ahead and close this request. Here it's asking us for some resolution notes, which are mandatory. We can populate a closure code, currently non-mandatory. We'll probably make that mandatory. We can have the category field. Time taken, this will automatically clock up, and we can create a knowledge article using AI as well. You may have also noticed the AI Insights tab. Halo's got a lot of different AI features available. Insights, automatic triaging, wrap-up notes, the creation of KB articles, sentiment. Many of those can be enabled or disabled at will from the AI area. Some of these, in fact, don't require your own connection. You can use Halo's default connection. A variety of these will work without any additional costs. Okay, the last thing I want to have a look at is going to be our new starter request. I want some child tickets to be created from this request type. We'll quickly have a look at the fields, and sure, this will get us by for the moment. So let's go ahead and fill out this form. Okay, so this new user needs a lot of hardware, a lot of software. They need a lot of access as well, admin rights. We'll go ahead and submit this out of the box. This is going to be an example of one of our ticket templates, and the value of templates in Halo is we can have to-do lists as well as pre-populated information or child tickets to be created as well. So we can see here the new starter request ticket template has a few different rules: create new user in Active Directory, install, bundle, hardware as well. Each of these rules can have, so each of these child tickets can have its own set of rules as well. So you might want to create it based on the value of a field, an approval after another child ticket's been closed, many different options as well. So this is that new starter request has come through. I'm actually the approver, so I can go ahead and approve this from within the UI. And now that that ticket has been approved based on the rules of our child tickets, rules of our template, it's actually created some child tickets for us. These are their own completely separate entities. They're no different from any standard ticket, which means they can have their own default titles, their own default descriptions, to-do lists, signees, based on any number of rules that we set up. They'll have their own workflows, their own actions, and their own fields as well. Okay, so the final thing I'm going to do is add my record into a team. Would normally handle this using agent roles, but just as an example, I'm just going to manually add myself into the service desk team. Looks like I'm already there. Excellent. I've got access to the tickets. Service desk, there I am. Perfect. What we'll do now is just test our flow from start to finish. So as a user on the portal, let's go ahead and raise a incident, laptop charger issue. You can actually see some suggested articles for us if we can spell this correctly. We can have a look at this, see if it's useful to us. In this case, no, it's not. So we'll go ahead and log our request. Rich text field, we can add any screenshots, marked up content in here, GIFs, etc. We'll go ahead and submit that. No attachments in this case. Perfect. As a user, I can see my ticket ID. I'll receive a new ticket acknowledgement as well. Later on, we can go ahead and hide these from the user. They don't need to see that information, but let's grab that ticket ID, switch over to our agent view, and it should be within our service desk. Lucky for us, based on previous AI insights, it's actually been assigned to Ken. We can jump in here. We can charge this on his behalf. Yes, we'll keep that as an incident. Single user impacted. This is quite urgent. Laptop, physical damage. Perfect. So we can have a look at our AI insights. We'll go ahead and apply all of those. We can now communicate with the user. It'll populate their address. Excellent. We can reassign if needed, add any private internal notes, create an appointment with the user to perhaps replace it. We might actually want to log this to our supplier as well. And when we're happy, we can go ahead and resolve. This will prompt us to send an email to the user. We'll have an opportunity to review the template. We'll need to update this branding later on, but we'll go ahead and hit save. And our incident is now resolved. And there is our working service desk configured, branded, integrated, all in a matter of minutes. No PS engagement, no 6-week project plan. It can be as simple as that. Of course, there's some fine-tuning opportunity in there. We might want to review those workflows, review the forms, review the child tickets that are created. If you'd like to see any of this in more detail or get in contact, feel free to shoot me a message on LinkedIn, or you can use the link below.